Flying Lotus has dropped some new tracks to go along with his newly announced album. Now, I had a bit of confusion at first when he dropped this, not these two tracks, but the first one, which was Fire Is Coming featuring David Lynch. Now, my confusion was mostly because it felt like, to consider it a track, the music had to be longer than like at least 5 seconds. And it felt like there were little bits and pieces that were hidden within the, through the storytelling and through like the atmosphere that really came through with David Lynch's voice and some of the music that was like hidden, like I said, in certain spots. Those were kind of a little not obvious enough for me to really like look at it as a track. However, I did really, like I said, I felt the intensity that really kind of permeated it and the fear that sort of was being pushed by this track. So it was I thought it was cool for what it did and the story it was trying to tell. However, I just was kind of confused. Wasn't sure if it was a track or not. So I literally was like, I ain't gonna talk about this because all I heard was like 10 seconds of music. With that being said though, he has, yes, announced an album, Flamagra, I think that's how you pronounce it, and it will be coming out May 24th, and we got 2 tracks that will be on it. They're called Spontaneous and Takashi. And again, this features kind of my favorite characteristic of Flying Lotus's songs, is that it kind of takes you on a journey and you get lost in this journey. And really with Flying Lotus, the cool thing about it is it never really feels like you're being pulled and yanked in different directions in a chaotic manner where, you know, it's formatted as though you have to kind of just like pick and choose what you're gonna hear. In this way, Flying Lotus really does make some wonderful music, and it starts out with Spontaneous. If I had to think about the characteristics of how both songs interact, it really does feel like a snake eating its tail because the way they loop is way too smooth. If you kind of play Spontaneous and then go Takashi and then just let it loop, you will barely realize that like Spontaneous is hitting until like you hear Little Dragon, who is featured on Spontaneous. Now, she has a very wonderful sultry voice that swims over this really funky, groovy beat that doesn't do much to really summon anything other than a groove and have this real feeling of like something is blooming here. And the reason I say something is blooming here is because the narrative that Little Dragon presents through the lyrics is that she's kind of egging this person on in a good way that she loves. It sort of resembles the idea of kind of being like having, you know, driving someone to be better. And here what she's doing is essentially asking this person, hey, you know, how far should we go with our love? Like, and it's sort of like saying like, let's go, bring your flame, bring your spear, bring your like sticks, bring these things and we're going to improve on it. And that's the idea of spontaneity. Basically, you're, you know, bringing something fresh to the table and not letting it just stagnate. In any relationship, I think people appreciate spontaneousness as long as it's not a constant like random guessing game, like you're just trying to be random for no reason, versus like actually driving someone to accomplish their goals. And in general, anyone that really drives you is someone you should want to have in your life, especially just because it allows you to find a determination you might not have had, and finding people like that is pretty special. So keep those people in your life. But yeah, spontaneity in a relationship, in any kind of relationship, really allows for that like bond to not stagnate in a way that I think is difficult. I think in relationships like where people are dating, it's a little easier because you can like surprise them with flowers or take them out here or there, versus like friendship where it's kind of like, hey, let's go hang out, and you know, still having those different activities, those different things. So it's kind of cool, again, the way she kind of like swims along this song, and it's really with the, like, again, it's very groovy vibes, has a very spacey feel to it overall. Like both songs have a very spacey feel to it, and I love it. I think for me, I'm just constantly revisiting Spontaneous because I really enjoy Little Dragon's voice over this, and I really enjoy the music. However, I couldn't say like, I couldn't really have a favorite, although again, on the next song, Takashi, it is pretty damn good. Takashi is sort of, again, talking about there's no lyrics here, and something about Flying Lotus has helped at least me appreciate instrumentals in a way that I feel like is difficult, in terms of the fact that it feels like psychologically a lot of us kind of require a type of noise, or at least my generation, we've kind of developed this thing where we have to have something happening in the background. If we're more, you know, reading, then there needs to be a podcast that may or may not have a subject matter that follows that. And having these different kind of aspects of needing noise, I feel like sometimes can go into music where it feels like some people may feel as though, I'm not saying everyone feels like that, I'm pretty sure like there are a lot of people who appreciate instrumentals, but I feel like majority might be on the side of kind of wanting lyrics to almost hold your hand through the process of listening to music, so giving you a story. And like, I love narratives the most, but here the instrumental serves as that narrative. And I think musically I really love Flying Lotus's ability to make a narrative, and here it feels kind of like you're taking a, you know, zoom through the cosmos. And what's interesting about Takashi is the way that it warps and bends. This track does not stay stagnant, and no Flying Lotus track I've ever really listened to ever felt like it was stuck in one place. It feels like you're at a start point and he says, let's go. And you kind of just travel along with him as he kind of takes you to this musical thing. And what's interesting about Takashi is that it starts and finishes in such a, you know, not drastically different way, but different in the way that it starts sounding kind of like, at first the intro really sounds as though it's going to be this very like sweet, laid back song and really have these kind of chill vibes. And it almost immediately switches up. But again, it's not in this abrupt fashion where you feel as though you've just been yanked. It feels like he's almost like, okay, we're gonna speed up now, and the tempo and pace really pick up, and it feels like, you know, you almost have to dance to this. It has this really primal energy fused with this modern these modern sensibilities that come together to really make this song have this just energy to it. It just feels like you have to move when you listen to this song. And then as it's going, you know, the best part, the most enjoyable thing I think about any good song is that even if like the runtime is long, if it feels as though like you don't want the song to end, and then when it ends you're kind of like, huh? And so this song clocks in at 5 minutes and 50 seconds. Yet I got to the 2-minute mark and I was like, damn, like this is a really great song. Like, and I'm thinking like, while I'm thinking like, yes, it's a great song, I was also thinking, huh, man, this is like, it felt as though I was done. Like, I was like, wow, like we really went through those 5 minutes fast. And I checked and it's only the 2-minute mark. I'm like, oh my God, the way he's able to kind of pack those, all those instruments together and really bring out a life. And like, again, it's very groovy. It has a lot of, I love the way the snare hits, and I love the way it almost feels like a beat is chasing like something down. And then as it, for a minute, it kind of like, it calms down a little bit. And that's where it seemed like it's about to end. But that's kind of the first little trick Flying Lotus does, that he's like, nope, and it keeps going, and it doesn't feel like it's dragging on. Instead, it feels like every time he goes, the pressure gets amped up, and it builds in this really fantastical way. It has, again, very spacey feel. Like, it feels as though with this song you're riding through the cosmos, and I really love it for that. And I think ultimately too, what happens is with any good creative thing, the most difficult part usually is the ending. I know sometimes people will work backwards. I don't know how well that works in music, especially considering, but hey, I'm sure there are musicians who do it, especially because the best musicians typically will become atypical and deviate from what we expect from a song. And usually those are the ones we appreciate the most, that are able to deviate from the typical structure of a song, typical structure of what we expect to be good, and still make something good or even better than what we initially expected. And so the conclusion, I think, holds a lot of promise in the fact that you think like, okay, it finally comes out and it has this different kind of sound to it. Every transition and every shift in both of these songs really come together well, and they don't have any kind of like, it doesn't feel abrupt or any, you know, terse at any point in time. And when it has this conclusion on Takashi, it works the way it kind of just like, it's almost like a computer shutting down. You know, you get the loading sounds of it going like, oh, like if you remember way back before we all had super fancy fast computers, you have to press a button and there'd be that sound that I can't remember right now, but it's like, that's sort of what it feels like here, like a computer's powering down. And so when it like hits that end point and it finishes, you look at the time and it's been only 5 minutes 50 seconds, but you feel like you've been on like a 20-minute space journey and just seen all these kind of different stars and different life on the cosmos, and it's just wonderful. And Takashi and both Spontaneous really capture these characteristics in a unique and ultimately fun way that I believe Flying Lotus Lotus has really, you know, mastered his own kind of sound, and I can't wait to hear the rest of the album. There's gonna be a lot more songs. Takashi and Spontaneous, both were wonderful, captured my attention, and I cannot wait for the album. I am very excited. These were wonderful songs. Yeah. Flying Lotus. Well, this guy says,
please help, I was asked to reject it, and now I'm kind of stuck, and I thought it would be cool, but now I can't prove it, I don't know